Hey everybody, it's Justin and welcome back. Today we have an exciting video for you. Today we're going to be unveiling the new and improved BMW M3 in my garage here. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so there you have it, the new BMW M3 in my garage. Nobody's buying it, nobody at all. This doesn't look familiar, maybe it does. All right, so not a BMW M3, it's my old 325 IS. I did not get rid of it. I did not get a new BMW M3. I know I'm a little late on the April Fool's joke, but we have actually done a lot of upgrades to this thing in the off season, believe it or not. It has been M3-atized. It has a lot of M3 parts on it. Now we're gonna go through what we have already installed on the car, and we actually have some more stuff to install as well. Let's talk about what we've got and what we're going to do. All right, so the large majority of the upgrades that we did from an M3 part perspective are on the front of the car. If you guys have a keen eye for 3 Series BMWs and the differences between an M car and a non-M car, you're probably noticing that these front brakes are a lot larger than what are on the non-M car or on my previous 325 IS before we had these brakes. So this is actually an entire M3 front end or M3 front brake setup. So we have the M3 rotors, we have the M3 calipers, of course, we have M3 hubs and spindles and bearings, and we also threw on some stainless steel brake lines as well as a Hard Motorsports brake ducting kit. So that was a pretty huge upgrade from the stock parts on the car. Everything is bigger, from the bearings to the rotors to the calipers to the brake pads to the spindles. A lot stronger, a whole lot better performing, and overall a much better and reliable setup for the track driving that I do with this car. Now on the non-M3 part upgrade side, we added new stock lower control arms and bushings. We added a Z3 steering rack from a BMW Z3. This makes the steering a lot more responsive and a lot quicker, as the stock steering rack is very, very slow. Took many turns of the steering wheel just to get the car to turn. On the interior of the car, we added a Sparco 383 steering wheel to replace that gigantic stock steering wheel and the airbag that goes in it. All right, so that covers all of the M3 upgrades that are on the car right now. We have more to do, believe it or not. I have a few parts, actually more than a few parts, stored up in my shed out here. I'm gonna go grab those and then we'll go over what we're gonna be putting in the car today. All right, so as you can see, we have quite a few parts here to go on the car. I have my new, or not new, they're actually used Apex Arc 8 wheels, 17x9 with brand new Hankook RS4 tires. I used to have a set of these wheels for my BMW some years ago. I sold them to buy the wheels for my first FRS, and anyways, picked up this used set from a friend of mine not too long ago so we could have a second set of wheels again for the BMW. On the floor here, we've got the rest of the Hard Motorsports brake duct kit, which we have to get installed. I have a new front, what do you call these things? A front grille panel or front nose panel. The one on the car right now is all bent up and out of shape, so we're gonna get that replaced. We also have the Sparco Evo seat here. You guys probably recognize this one. It actually came out of my BRZ. What I'm going to do is put the Sparco Evo in the driver's seat of the BMW, so it's a more comfortable seat than the Sparco Sprints that are in there. What I did is I took the driver's Sparco Sprint out of the BMW and put it in the BRZ. So both cars will have the nice seat in the driver's side so it's comfortable. Last but not least, in order to be a wannabe M3, you gotta have an eBay M3 bumper. So that is what is in this box. We're gonna open this thing up real quick, take a look, and then finally get started on installing all of the parts on the car and hopefully have it ready in time for the race weekend. We're actually going to Pueblo Motorsports Park this weekend in about 5 days, so we got to get it going, get the car on the track. All right, so this is my M3 eBay bumper. This is polypropylene, some kind of reinforced plastic. Terribly inexpensive these bumpers are. I think I paid $130 or $140 for this thing shipped. So the reasoning behind this, you guys are probably wondering, why did you go with a cheap knockoff M3 bumper on eBay? Well, for track cars like mine, dedicated track cars and road racing cars, they all opt for these cheap eBay bumpers because they get trashed so often in racing, whether it's doing HPDE or time trials in a dedicated track car like mine. If you're going off course, you're bouncing through the dirt, potentially hitting brush or shrubs or ruts in the dirt, that kind of thing. The bumpers get jacked up. In road racing, there should be no question there. All of the bumper to bumper contact, front ends to rear ends on the cars, the bumpers just get messed up, so they get replaced a lot. So my race shop, SCR Performance, up in Loveland, Colorado here, they had recommended to go the eBay route. There's no point in spending the extra money on a real OEM style grill or something that you might find from ECS Tuning or something like that. eBay is the way to go. These things fit really great, or at least hopefully we're gonna find out that it fits really great. I've been told that the fitment is pretty much perfect with these things. So we're gonna go ahead and get it on the car here. It also comes with this mesh front grille, as you can see here, which we will probably put on. And the big deal with the M3 bumpers as well, with the Hard Motorsports brake duct kit that I have, it is specifically designed for the M3 bumper ports. So I needed to get an M3 bumper because it doesn't necessarily work with my stock 325 bumper. So we're gonna start ripping things apart, get this guy on, get the nose grill on, and hook up the rest of the Hard Motorsports brake duct kit as well. And then we got a bunch of other stuff to put in the car too. E36 bumper removal is pretty straightforward, at least from what I have read and researched. I actually have never removed the bumper on this car. I've done it multiple times on the BRZ, or I'm sorry, on my FRS. Have not done it on the E36 yet, but what it looks like is there's this strip across the front of the bumper, and I'm not gonna do a detailed how-to on how to remove this stuff. I'll kind of give you guys the overview and then throw it on a time lapse. But you remove the little bumper strip here, there's bolts behind it. Obviously, I have to remove my tow hook, and then on the rear side of the bumper, back here, and then on the underside are some other screws and bolts that tie the bumper into the fender liner. Once you get those bolts and screws removed, the bumper pretty much just pulls straight out. Now, similar process with this front nose grille, the metal panel piece that is all dinged up and dented on my car. There's a number of bolts around the top and around the inner sections of the grill area that hold that in. When I get the bumper off, maybe I'll try to show you a little bit closer look at that. We have to take the headlights out as well, or at least you have to make it an easier process getting that nose grill out. So we'll probably do that also. So let's go ahead and crank up the time lapse. We'll get started and rip things apart and hope everything goes well. So the bumper came off pretty easy, just about as I had suspected. 4 bolts on the front of the bumper underneath that rubber strip that I had showed you, and then a handful of little bolts around the fender liner and on the underneath. Now there is a metal support beam on the stock bumper that needs to be moved to the M3 bumper. So this little piece down here, it's kind of a, I can't tell if it's a metal or some kind of hard plastic, but anyways, that needs to come off, and then that needs to go onto the backside of the M3 bumper, which we'll show you here real quick. So that piece will fit in here in this area on the M3 bumper, and that acts as the bumper support for the bumper and kind of what holds the bumper into place. So next up, we're going to get this nose panel off on the front of the car, and then probably take the headlights off as well. So for this nose grill, there is about 12 different bolts that you have to get off in order to loosen this thing up and be able to remove it. There's 2 on the edge of the bumper side, 2 and 4 on the top here, and then 2 on the inner side of the bumper. We'll try to point out the different bolts here real quick. On the underside of the ends by the wheel well, there is 2 right up in this area. There is 2 bolts down in this area, 1 on top and 1 on the bottom. They're already taken out. Here is the side with the bolts still installed. 1 there, 1 down there. And then you have the 4 top bolts, 2 up here, and then 2 exactly on the other side. With all of those bolts removed, this thing will pull right out. So we'll get this thing off real quick here and then take a look at that compared to the new one that I have, or I guess the new used one that I have. So neither of these front nose panels is very pretty. So the one reason I got this other one is because it's not dented. This is the newer one of the 2 that I have. This is the one that I just took off. You can see there's all kinds of dents and dings in these areas, and what it does is it makes it so that the grills, you know, standard BMW grills, they don't really fit and stay in there. There's another big dent there. It's dented down here, and overall just not in the best shape. Now, the other used one that I picked up super cheap a long time ago, you're probably wondering why I'm putting better parts on, because I just mentioned you want to go with the cheap stuff for the race cars, but this was cheap. I don't even remember how much I paid for it, but the grills fit in it. It is straight, and it'll allow the hood to line up a little bit better. So it in itself is not very pretty, but better than the one that I had on there before. Now, while we have the whole front end of this car off, what I'm going to do is a little bit more weight savings on the car and actually remove the entire air conditioning system. So the AC compressor, the AC condenser, and the fan down here, and the related hoses and components. Now, the good thing with doing this is I don't have to worry about emptying or bleeding out the AC system, because when I bought the car, the owner said that the system was completely dry. It had no more air conditioning refrigerant in it, and it needed to be refilled. And I never did that because I didn't really care about air conditioning in this car. It was mostly a race car and a future track car. So we tested out on the bleed valve. There's 0 pressure in the system, so we're good to go there. Already started unplugging some of the piping and the tubing, and I'm gonna go ahead and do this kind of offline, taking everything apart, because it's gonna take a little bit of time and I just want to jam it out and get it done. So I'll show you everything that comes off of the car once it is done. I'll give you a quick look at the condenser section on the car. That's this fan up in the front, and the condenser is the little radiator system in behind it. So all of this stuff will come out, and then the compressor for the AC is kind of up in that area. You can't even really see it. And then there are some additional parts down here and the hoses and things that go along with it. So we're gonna go ahead, get all that stuff removed, and save some weight on the car, make this thing even lighter than it is already. And voila, we now have an empty front end, no more condenser or fan in front of the radiator. We have the compressor removed from underneath the engine there. That little canister and the associated hoses are also out as well. All right, finally we got all of these air conditioning parts out of the car. Let's take a look at what we have all on the floor. I'm gonna try to weigh it up here. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it or not. But anyways, let's take a look at all of the pieces. So here we have the AC compressor. This is the heaviest piece in the car, that lug that sits on the front of the engine. This thing took me a while to get out of the car, and just because of the space and the restricted area that you have, and really all it is these 4 bolts here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you have the tensioner that holds the AC belt in place that runs off your engine, these long hoses that go up into the engine bay to the AC system itself. This little unit here, I'm actually not even sure what that does. And then over here we have the condenser fan, and then the AC condenser, which is this radiator looking thing here. So all of those AC parts on the floor weighed just about 40 pounds. So knocking off 40 pounds on the car is pretty significant, just with that compressor, the condenser, the pulley, and the various little components, hoses and things that go along with it. So a good drop from the front of the car. Now we can get started on putting everything back together, turn this into the M3 that I've always wanted. All right, the new nose panel installed without a hitch. Everything fit pretty well. I've got the new bumper prepped, the new M3 bumper that is. And this one was a little bit tricky only because of this piece here, the big support brace. This is the, I don't know, metal piece. It's metal. It doesn't sound like it now because it's attached to all of the plastic, but that one was a little tricky to get installed. There's the old bumper over there. But we were able to get that installed and everything worked out okay. So the M3 bumper is now ready to be test fit. I'm actually going to test fit it first. I had a hard time with the Hard Motorsports brake ducts. They have these little brackets that come with them, these little guys that connect the hard brake duct tubes to the lower subframe somewhere. I couldn't figure out where it goes exactly, so I have to get that installed again at a later time, possibly if I can't get it done before the race weekend. But now we're going to test fit that M3 bumper and see how that works out. All right, everything is mocked up on the car now. I haven't tightened anything down like the headlights or even the front nose panel here or the ends of the bumper. This is really just the test fitting phase, and I'm gonna make sure everything is fitted properly, but so far looks pretty good. My wannabe M3 is nearing completion, at least for this phase of the project. Let's take a closer look at how things turned out. All right, so not half bad for a budget eBay bumpered BMW M3 with other M3 parts on it, but we still have more work to do. I'm gonna button up all of these parts that I just test fitted, get everything secured in place, then call it a night for tonight. I think tomorrow we have my Sparco Evo to put in the car, and that Hard Motorsports brake kit or brake duct kit, if I can call the shop and get the tips on how to get that thing installed, we'll install that thing as well. But that's not a deal breaker if I don't get that installed this go around. We do need the race seat installed for obvious reasons. So we're gonna finish this up, pick it up in the morning. All right, after some poking around and making some phone calls and a visit to the dealership, I was able to get the Hard Motorsports brake kit installed. I've got the bumper back off of the car, and basically I was missing a little screw attachment where the Hard Motorsports brake duct tubes mount to. I'll try to show you that in a second, but these little teeny tiny plastic things that a screw goes into, and actually I think I have one over here. Show you what it looks like for those that are doing this brake duct install, and it's only because I have a non-M3. So the M3s have these little screw dealies. So these little guys actually pop up into the frame rail and then allow you to put a screw into it, and that's where the mounts go for the Hard Motorsports brake duct kit. We'll take a look at it here. Now right up in there you can see where that little plastic piece went, that little white line, and there's another one back here. But those are what you screw this little bracket into, or the mounting bracket for the main tube. And then here's what our main brake duct tube looks like. And it comes out on the wheel well side. Obviously this is a flexible tube, so when the wheel turns, I can't do that one-handed, but the tube squishes with the wheel, or with the turning of the wheel that is, so that it stays out of the way. So now we can finally button the rest of this up, get the M3 bumper on there, get it all bolted in and secured. I gotta put the grill on it too real quick actually. And then I've gotta mount my Sparco seat in the car. I'm doing a hard mount on it, so you gotta do a lot of test fitting and rebolting and test fitting and bolting to get your seat position just right, because there is no slider, and obviously it's a hard mounted back seat, so it doesn't recline or anything like that. So you have to get the seating position just right, and it bolts in there solid and stays in place. We're gonna get to work because I gotta get this thing going by the morning so we can get off to the racetrack. I will spare you guys the visual trauma of me test fitting the Sparco race seat in and out of the car 20, probably 25 times over just to get the seat height and the fitment proper, and instead just show you the finished product. Came out pretty well and is looking really slick with the Sparco steering wheel. Now the bumper, I had one more last thing to do, and that was to update my glow-in-the-dark Batman duct tape over the fog light covers. I think it looks pretty sweet and goes really good with the all-black Batmobile theme of this car. And one last thing to do before we get this thing back on the ground, getting the wheels and tires back on those Hankook RS4s on the Apex Arc 8 wheels, and then we're ready to get it off the quick jack and on the ground. Alright, I think we've finally wrapped up all of the work for the E36 BMW for this week. We did so many things. Obviously we went over the M3 upgrades that I had done to the car by the shop, the steering rack upgrade, the Sparco steering wheel. We added the eBay M3 front bumper and the new front nose panel on the car as well, along of course with the Hardin Motorsports brake duct kit. We took out a whole bunch of the AC stuff that we'll see on the floor. This is basically all of the stuff we have taken out of the car this week. And we're just about ready to head on to the track. We got the wheels and tires back on, those Apex Arc 8 wheels with the new Hankook RS4 tires. So really pumped to get this thing on the track. It's been a long time in the coming since last season. I gotta run out to get my trailer. I'm gonna show you guys one last look at the finished product, and then I am heading out.